Peace, world. How you doing? It's your brother Mikey Fever, NYP Talk Show Wednesday. Got the Black Round Table in the building. Our brother
Peace, peace.
Magnetics in the building. Peace to the chat. To Akwet, Kaba, Unk, Ashe to you too, sister. Peace. So how you feeling, my brother?
Man, I'm black, family. I'm black. How you?
I'm good, man. We're black. We Moors. We're Hebrews. We all that gods.
Yes, sir.
We everything.
Yes,
We
sir.
all. Peace to everyone that's tuning in right now, man.
Yep,
Peace
I
to y'all.
recognize all those different titles, because they represent the same people in the same struggle. So yeah,
No doubt.
I'm
Peace
I'm
to
here
Ernest
for all
Daily.
of it.
Yeah, definitely. We
Hey.
all one family,
Mm-hmm.
man.
Mm-hmm.
So tonight we're gonna be talking about the liberation theology,
Yes,
part
sir.
2. If you missed this
Black
first
at it.
show, huh?
I said black at it.
Oh, Black at it, of course. For
Mm-hmm.
those who missed part 1, go back and watch part 1 to our, viewers and listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe, and we about to get into it. Pardon me, pardon. So the
Yeah.
liberation theology, we're
Yes,
waiting for
sir.
the next guest to come on.
Okay.
Let's jump into one, which is Adulis, international city of trade and commerce during the 1st century AD, a
Yeah.
freedmen's town.
Yeah. Let me just preface this real quick, family, before we go into this, because I want to give people a good understanding of where we going.
Definitely,
Um, now what we're dealing with is the principle of Tawahedo, which means oneness. Okay, and this is a
definitely.
oneness that united a religious community of Eritrea, the 9 tribes of Eritrea, the different regions of Eritrea, the multiple languages of Eritrea. And it's a unity that was strong enough to withstand a UN embargo,
Mm,
Mengistu, and the military assault of the West, a resilience which we celebrate to this day without not one IMF loan. So when we
mm,
speak of liberation theology, we're speaking of spiritual systems and principles which have led a once colonized people to be a decolonized people, from being annexed by white supremacist minions to freedom and independence. This is Eritrea. This is Tawahedo.
mm.
Yeah,
Salute
yeah.
to Eritrea, Soweto.
We don't want people to think we're just talking about empty, theories and whatnot. We want to show people that this was something that led a people that were once disunited to be united, and once were colonized to be decolonized, and it gives hope to our many different countries in Africa who are kind of under a neo-colonialism and whatnot, and kind of spread out because of tribalism and whatnot. It gives us
Mhm.
hope that there's things in place and there's physical examples that this doesn't they don't have to stay like that, and they can change and they can make it to be free and independent. Give me a
That's
second.
a fact.
Give me one quick second.
That's a fact. All right, take your time. Peace, people. Peace. So we're waiting for the brothers.
Yeah, so she's in the she said she's in the backstage. You might want to check and see.
Checking right now. I don't
Okay.
see her. Don't see her. If you want to forward her that email.
Okay. All right. Let me try this again.
Yeah, definitely. All right. That's powerful right there, what you just said, because that is still plaguing Africa is that colonization, which got all the nations divided. Not only were we having infights amongst ourselves, tribalism that also caused us to fall, and be divided and controlled. So I respect that
The
indeed. So hopefully
yeah.
the sister she'll get on. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. So let's just go into and we could circle back when she gets back. Um,
Okay.
Point 2 is Negus Zoskalis, 1st century Negus.
Now we can go back to point number 1 about Adulis.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So I really like Adulis because this is the particular period, 1st century AD, that the Bible covers. You see that they're speaking
Mhm.
of, around the time when Jesus is said to be born. But this place and the people who occupied this place are real people. They're not mythical people. They're not just biblical. It's not just a myth and whatnot. These are real people, and this was a real place. It's like
Mhm.
how they speak about different places in the Bible. For
Yeah.
some reason, this place, Adulis, was left out. You
Mhm.
see, but this is like a contemporary of, I would say at least, I would say Babylon,
Mhm.
um, contemporary, even being right next to Egypt,
Mhm.
and a place in which people fled from the captivity that came to Egypt. That put a lot of us in captive. People
Yeah.
fled here, to
Mhm.
Adulis, but for some reason it's not mentioned when they mention this time period, or in the Bible. It's not mentioned. It's referenced kind of, but it's
Yeah.
not really mentioned. So when you leave out time periods, certain people, certain places, you miss a lot of the necessary information of what they did and who they are and what they're about. It's like, somebody subtracted your life history from
Mhm.
the equation, everything that you did and your parents, where you lived, where you went to school, your experience would be subtracted, and we would lose a lot. And by the same token, when they subtract certain places from the equation, from the respective, mentioned in history, you lose a lot. And Adulis is one of these places. Um, they said that Adulis was such a powerful place that a lot of the Greek traders, they spent most of the time here
Mm.
because because it was one of the world's centers of trade, being where it's at the crossroads of the world. So pretty much the whole world came here to get certain things like tortoise shell, to get obsidian, and a host of other things that came from within the continent. But since Adulis is at with what's now called Massawa, it's at it's on the coast. It's on the coast right there.
Mm.
So the different traders could come right there, get what they needed, and get on their way.
So
And there's a lot of other places that are similar to this. They talk about to this day, but this was the earliest one and the largest one. But go ahead.
with that being said, you said, removing someone's history, subtracting that, and it's not being mentioned is
Hmm.
basically that's part of the tentacles of neocolonization and rewriting
Hmm.
one's history is basically removing your accomplishments, your contributions, and
Yes, sir.
everything else. So it's very important that that you mention that. So Adulis, it basically it was as you said, the center of trade within that region where everyone
Indeed.
came there to get what they needed. Other
Yeah.
than what you said they were trading, who
Mhm.
else were they trading with outside of
What's now known as Saudi Arabia. I
Mhm.
think it was I can't think of it exactly what it was called, but at the time, but what's now known as Saudi Arabia. If you look at the actual map, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, about the
Mhm.
peripherals of Eritrea, it goes from Saudi Arabia, it goes from India, it goes actually all the way to Asia.
Mm.
Because these were seabound people in that direction. Now, in the other direction, it went all through the Mediterranean, possibly to North America as well, because we found many of the things which are just native to North America in, say, Massawa, in Zula, which is the ancient cities, of this region. So they were definitely a seafaring people because, one of the names is also Bahari Nagasi, which means the kings of the sea. So
Yeah.
yeah, how you see like they say Britain's military or their navy was world, ran all the seas. At
Yeah.
this time, they were the people who had the navy that pretty much ran all the seas and spanned throughout the whole globe and whatnot. But once again, it's been subtracted from the equation, so we don't get it.
My first time
Yeah,
hearing about it because I hear like other when I hear like first century things and when you go back to BC,
right.
you hear stuff like the Mesopotamia, Sumeria, and all
See,
that, but I never heard of Aldous. So this is a shocker
I
for me that
believe, yeah, yeah,
Adulis, yes, like
and
little
then
things. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and being the important role that it played during this time, as far as culture, as far as trade, as far as just world prominence and dominance, it should be there, but we know why it's not there,
Of
right?
course, of course. So,
Yeah,
most definitely. I wish the sister she was on because I know she be dropping bombs as well.
man. She says she's in the backstage,
I
for
know, but
something going on.
did she enter it? Because I could
Yeah,
resend her the if you could text me her email, I'll send it to her email directly.
I sent it to her email too, family. For she says she's sitting in the
Yeah, I don't see her, man.
Are you trying to log back? Okay.
Yeah, I don't see her. So damn, man, that's powerful right there.
Yeah.
So how the least the commerce, they were doing commerce during the first century. All right, in
Right.
Freemanstown. Okay, can you elaborate on the Freemanstown aspect?
So around this time, in the place right above it, Egypt,
Yeah,
we know as Kemet, the Ptolemies, they had come and pretty much seized all of Egypt. The Ptolemies means like Roman general.
yeah.
So what they were trying to do was miscegenate their way, Greece's way, into this region. So if you ever read about the Ptolemies, you'll also read about the Cleopatras, because
Hmm.
Ptolemy means, like, let me say it again, Roman general.
Yeah,
So, but they would come and take wives from that land so that they could
yeah. There
make a
she go.
mixture. There we go.
And you say the
There
Ptolemies dealing with Cleopatra. I know that goes back with Mark Antony and all that
Mark
when he came.
Anthony, indeed. And also another part in there they don't talk about is Petra, which is the place that's close to that, which is
Mhm.
also a first century place. But well, this was the way in which they miscegenated their way into
And
the
keep that going.
continent.
I muted it. I got
Okay,
it.
yeah. This was the way that they miscegenated their way into the continent, and then when you go to that region now, you see the people that's in Egypt,
Hmm.
but they don't look like the people that's on the wall that's in the hieroglyphics.
Of course
That's
not.
because those people that are there now are a residual of the mixture between the Romans and the indigenous people. And after year after year after year, it got lighter and lighter and lighter. A lot of people left out of there in a form of an exodus, and a lot of those people went to Adulis. You see,
Oh, got you,
yes,
got you.
sir. Yes,
That
and they
got you.
brought a lot of that culture as well, because the language of Gez is one of the many languages of Kemet. So if
Mm.
people want to be able to really see where the culture of Kemet still lives today, living and breathing, you can go here. You can go to Eritrea. You can go to some parts of Ethiopia as well, and some parts of even Saudi Arabia, Yemen. You know,
That's on the bucket list, man. I have to make a trip out there, man.
me too, man.
Definitely. So with that, waiting for sister to
Okay.
pair up. Um, let's get to this, right? When you talking about the Negus Zoskalis, if I'm saying it correctly, first century
Zas,
Negus.
yeah, Zaskalis,
Yeah, Zoskalis. So
Zaskalis, and some people call him Zeus
Zeus
Kalis.
Zoskalis. All
Kalis.
right.
Yeah, because
So
when you read the books like the Iliad and the Odyssey, so
mhm,
they speak about Zeus Aethiopius. Does that
mm,
sound familiar when I say Zeus? Any of that sound familiar when I say Zeus Aethiopius?
it sounds very familiar. Zeus Ethiopia, something like that.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So
Yeah.
that lets you know the region that Zeus was from. And they also describe Zeus as the glowing black one. But here
Mm,
they pronounce it Zaskulis. And this was like the oldest known ruler and king of Adulis, you know. Very intelligent brother, spoke multiple languages, and he is said to have known the Greek history and the Greek language better than the Greeks. And, this is why the Greeks spent so much time in his city and whatnot. And if you go to Greece today, there's an island called Eritrea.
mm. Yeah, I see that. And he was
Mm.
also the administrator of Adulis. So basically, within
Hmm.
that point, he was like what we considered Imhotep in ancient Kemet. So he was like a Thoth, the administrator. He knew everything.
There
Everything
you
was
go.
through him. Wow.
Yes, sir. The best knower.
Let's know what that. Wow, man. This is powerful. This just going through this is dope. So Negus, this goes first century. So before, like, I'm gonna. This is a coming from left field. Before him, who was the one before him that imparted that
Um,
knowledge on him?
Not sure who was before him, but you know, the land is described as, I believe it's um Ta Neter, I believe it's described as, or Punt. They describe
Mm,
it as Punt, and it's described as the land of the gods. That you know, a lot of very precious minerals and whatnot were extracted from. That, you know, Kemet got a lot of very precious minerals from. But that's the oldest administrator, or yeah, that's the oldest administrator, you know, that I could find. Yeah.
and then the Greeks, too, of course, because
Hmm.
the original man is the cream of the cream of the planet Earth for everything. So he's the
Yes,
original
sir.
at that.
All over the planet. Yeah.
Definitely.
That's
I don't know what's going
consistent
on
all over the planet.
with the sisters connection.
Hold on, let me see something.
Okay. So can you guys hear me? I can hear you and I can see you.
I can hear
We
But
can
you.
my
hear you, but
my
we can't
visual
Camera.
see
is
you.
blurry. I don't know why.
You probably gotta
Should
got
I
some
leave
got
and
some.
then come back in?
Yeah, try to do that.
Okay. Here we
Hmm.
go.
All right.
Yeah.
So okay, no doubt she'll get back to us. All
Okay.
right. Because we're gonna revisit when she gets on these points, but I'm gonna
Okay.
get to this one. This third point was Negus Amor, the man responsible for shielding the Muslims from persecution.
Indeed. This is a very infamous story. I think the Muslims just call him Neguse, you know, something like that, Negus, but that just means king, you know, right? You know, Negus. So that's not his name. But when I researched the name, it came back as Amar, Amar, you
Hmm.
know, something of that nature. But this was the man who shielded the Muslims who had been chased from out of Saudi Arabia by the warlords, okay, because they didn't like the religion, or, you know, for some odd reason things were being shaken up by Muhammad. So the
Yeah.
place that they came to is, they say it's Ethiopia, but it was actually here, to Adulis, Masua, and the mosque that they actually built is still there to this day.
Word.
It's still there to this day.
Oh, I don't
People
doubt
go
that.
and visit it. Yeah. Hmm.
Beautiful, man. See, our history and what you said earlier would make so much sense. We're not knocking nobody's religion. I have
Yeah.
yet to find any artifact that was mentioned in that Bible on earth, but you could find our history all over the place.
That's what I'm saying, family. And this was at the time in which the Bible was written about, but they used the fictional stories about the Bible to cover up this history. She should be in the backstage, family.
Don't see her yet.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's back to what you were saying is a fact because you know and I remember in school hearing about Greek mythology, and it's like everything with them was a myth. Like they would take our
Exactly.
researchers, our gods, our figures, and they be like, all right, this is our version right here.
You see what I'm saying? And see, I'm glad you brought up Greek mythology, because the Iliad and the Odyssey was the first century document, and they say that's the oldest document writing to come out of Europe. Most of the people they're mentioning in the Iliad and the Odyssey are people that are from this region, beginning,
Mm.
you know, starting with Zeus, Aethiopius. You see, you know what I mean? So a lot of characters within this are actually East African, but you know, the European has a very clever way of writing people, either writing you out or redefining your role within history. And if people don't dig and research and look, you just take it on face value. Whatever he said, oh well, these are just Greeks.
Paper
No,
genocide. That's that
that part. Yes,
papyrus
sir.
genocide. Peace, sister. How you
Yes,
doing?
sir. Peace, baby.
Peace.
Peace.
Yeah, over here,
Finally.
hey, we got you here, man. How you feeling?
Gotcha.
I apologize.
Nah, you good. You good. You good. Nothing to worry about. Trust me.
Yeah.
We was going through
Hmm.
the points, but we know we spoke on Adulis, the
Hmm.
city of trade and commerce during the first century, and
Hmm.
Negus Zoskalis, and he broke it
Zoskalis.
down. Zoskalis, and then he went into the basically the name he mentioned that is so close to Ethiopia. Zeus is Ethiopia. How you say it again?
Zeus, Ethiopius.
Ethiopios. And I'm like, wow, like even within a lot of truth is still there. So it's like kind of crazy. So I was
Yeah,
wondering,
and Adulis is known one of the the most like popular World Trade Centers, and
definitely.
it's one of the main archaeological sites in East Africa,
Mm,
and a lot of
Mhm.
things are being resurfaced, and so it predates Aksum, and it was like the hub of, like, because of it's set in a very strategic place. People from all over the world navigating the sea would come, um, to do trading, and it was a very, very successful world market.
it, he mentioned like the produces that they were trading, right? I believe within that region they were also doing incense as well, like frankincense. That was a
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
yeah,
Yep.
because like everything's starting to come back. But now I'm thinking like,
Mhm.
wow, I remember around that region they were very known for that. And was it
Yes,
coffee as
sir.
well?
Yes, sir. Yep. A lot of the main products, of the world, some of the most popular products in the world, actually emanated from out of this place. Um, I say out of this region was the
Yep.
place, was the, where Rome got a lot of its food. Without this region, Rome would have starved.
This is frankincense oil, one of the most powerful oils. This cures so many elements. So I would promote this.
And the
And back
name of that?
home, this is abundant. It grows everywhere. We do the incense in the church, in the homes, as part of the
Mhm.
coffee ceremony.
Yeah.
But now I'm using the oil to help people heal. I do healing work, with massage and using oils and stuff. So
You
you
gotta drop. Yeah.
mentioned it, so I'm showing it to you.
What's the name of that one? The brand?
Frankincense. Oh, the brand is Vitality.
Vitality. All right, definitely. We got
Mhm.
we got to get that on there for people who want to know more about these oils.
Yeah.
Frankincense and myrrh oils, as she says, done is good for. It's very abundant. It's good for massage therapy, healing,
Yeah.
spiritual. Sets the
Clearing,
ambiance,
yeah,
clearing.
detoxing the body and helping
Yeah,
our organs regenerate.
But do not ingest people.
that's right. That's
Some
right.
people will
Only
go out there.
inhale. Don't ingest.
Yeah.
Well,
They will-
actually, 2 days ago I was doing some body work. No, yesterday was a Somali sister, and she sent me home with chewable frankincense that she gets directly from Sumaya, because her uncle in Sumaya was a medicine man, and then he
Mhm.
just passed recently. So he passed the tradition to his son. And so she gets her supplies directly from Sumaya. And she gave me these really pure crystals of frankincense. And she said, you chew them. And then after, the oil is drained and you just spit it out like chewing gum. So
Oh,
there's a
okay.
safe way of ingesting frankincense.
So
Mm.
being that sister, we got you on here now. We spoke on Negus Amar, the man responsible for shielding the Muslims from the persecution, and Brother Magnetic broke it down for us about the those atrocity because something was going on. They were going at Muslims and due to religious persecution whatsoever. Do you have any more information on that?
Yeah. So, when Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was, teaching and spreading Islam, and his disciples or his followers were being persecuted in Medina, or in what's now known as like the area where Saudi Arabia is. And so he sent them to, what is now known as Masawa, the port of Eritrea, one of the main ports
Mm,
um, in Eritrea, and that's where they were sheltered, and that's where they stayed for a long time, and that's where the first Muslim mosque or masjid was
mm,
built. And you can go there, see where it was built. the burial ground of the disciples of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is still there and is a revered, place, and you can go see that in Eritrea right now.
Wow. You see, I was telling brother that's on my bucket list because being that you saying this now, I have never heard of Prophet Muhammad disciples being buried in Eritrea, I'm
See?
not slandering religion, but it's just that they don't push that narrative out there. They're not
Mm.
revealing that information to you because they always, say, just the Middle East. And we know our people were in the Middle East, but they never say somewhere in Africa, like, and he's in East Africa over in the Eritrea region. So hearing this for the first time is like, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really interesting because, like, I mean, historically, or just we know that Christianity predates Islam, and Tawahado is a lot older. And so when I first came, this is how I actually used to dress, right? So the shawl, the covering of the hair, the
Mhm.
modesty, this is the Wahda way of, and then people would assume I was Muslim, because I was covering my hair.
Yeah.
And I actually have, I'm a storyteller. I actually have a story about the Natsala. We call this Natsala, the shawl
Mhm.
that's made from cotton. And I have this Natsala story that I tell about how I inherited it from my mom, and how she used it as a way of modesty and strength, and the versatility of the Natsala as a
Mhm.
metaphor for my mom. But what, people would assume that I was a Muslim. I was, because I was covering my hair, and for me, it's like, but Tawhado came before Islam, and this was what we did before Islam was even, heard of. So there are just a lot of assumptions that people get, whether from Hollywood or just like very, very limited stereotypical
Mhm.
information or misinformation about a lot of things, but specifically because we're speaking about Islam and Tawahdo now,
Mhm.
is that, this is like a common practice in Tawahdo culture. um yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful, man. That's so beautiful. And you mentioned that the mosque. We get into that. The mosque in Masawa, like it still stands today. Like that, like with that mosque right there. Because how should I put it? It still stands today. It's the first mosque that's still built. They practice in there.
Mm.
They practice Islam in there still, right?
Yes, they
Still
do.
practice.
Yeah, yeah, they do. um and
Like,
if you remember, during our first session, I mentioned that part of what the English uh, and Haile Selassie tried to do in Eritrea was, like, create conflict between the Muslims and Christians, and split the nation by putting the Muslims with Sudan, because
mhm,
Sudan was majority Islam, but
mhm,
there are Christian, Coptics in Sudan as well. Just to be clear, and then they wanted to put the Eritrean Christians with Ethiopia, because Ethiopia is majority, Tawahdo Christian. And again, there are Ethiopians that are also Muslims, huge
mhm,
population of Islam in Ethiopia as well. So just it, like, the concept didn't even make sense, right? But for Eritreans, it was like, we are Eritreans before we're Muslims and
mhm.
Christians, and we don't have a conflict with, in our brotherhood as Muslims as and Christians. In fact, I wanted to introduce this book. Um, that was that's actually being launched in the United States now. Our
Mhm, for-
historian educator was in Seattle last week promoting this book,
mhm,
and it's the history of, Eritrean people in the time frame of, when the Italians lost to the British, and then
yeah.
that federation of Eritrea was Ethiopia. So it covers the time frame of 1941 to 62. Very, very important history, because what has happened with that part of the world, since it was very strategic, and what Western powers were always trying to get a hold of that strategic place and putting puppets that conserve their interests. The history of Eritrean people has been very, uh, you know, uh, um,
Obscure.
confused.
Mm-hmm.
sometimes obscured, and many attempts of just completely erasing it. So to have a book like this by such a great revolutionary writer, historian, educator, Alam Sagat Tesfaye, this is his name down here. It's This book is like
Yeah,
over
somebody's asking it.
500 pages, and very,
What's the
very well
title? Can you give
researched.
us the title,
Yeah.
Kunama?
Yeah, so the title is An African People's Quest for Freedom and Justice.
Mm-hmm. And what's
And then
the author's
if
name?
you see
Or
right here, this says Hanti Ertra, basically meaning one Eritrea. And that was the motto. And at the time, like in around the Federation, and when the English were trying to convince to the UN why this was a good idea, our leader at that time, who was a Muslim man by the name Sheikh Ibrahim Sultan, he told the UN, the speech is actually in this book, but he told them what you're doing is unjust, and there will be consequences, because as Eritreans, we will not just, allow this in bended knee. We are going to have to react. And
of
what
course.
the consequence is in your hands, like you are causing this.
Hmm.
And they still ignored the case of Eritrea. And
Terrible.
and so, as a result, we had to lose so many lives and
Arms,
have an
yeah.
armed struggle for 30 years just to get our freedom and liberation.
That's
um,
terrible. The only reason I ask if they still practicing it, because I know most places that are, you know, like wonders of the world, relics from history, they try to commercialize it. The European will go there and be like, all right, they did practice Islam in here. This is a masjid as we know. But now it's a museum for us. It's a tourist attraction. So that's why I was only asked that question. I hope they don't try to turn into a tourist attraction and make money off of it and desecrate the place.
no,
Yeah.
no, yeah, Eritrea. I mean, the world just celebrated Eid al-Adha a few days ago,
Yeah.
and the Eritrean national TV broadcasted how it was celebrated in Eritrea.
And
It
that's
yeah, it's very thriving religion and culture.
I like this one right here. Alexander Pushkin's legacy. Oh.
Yeah, all the way in Russia.
Yeah.
Uh, so Alexander, so if you go to the capital of Eritrea right now, Asmara,
Mhm.
there is a park, a public park where Alexander Pushkin's statue stands, and he's revered. He's, seen as, someone that has basically, the father of Russian language itself. But
Mhm.
he is, from East Africa. He's from so Eritreans are very, very proud of that history. His grandfather, I think, I don't want to get this wrong. I think
Yes,
it was,
that's right. His grandfather. Yep. Mm-hmm.
yeah, his grandfather was taken as a little boy from East Africa, and ended up all the way in Russia. And then Alexander Pushkin is given credit as, the literary and the founder of the Russian language as we know it now.
Okay.
And this is
I don't
history.
doubt.
This is not my opinion. This is history.
This is
Yeah.
fact. Yeah.
It's a fact, because the continent of Africa, there's like so many, over 250 plus dialects alone. So for that to happen, doesn't it, I'm not surprised, because our people are great. And again, when I say our people are great, it's not being anti-European or white. So those, I don't want people to panicking, but just letting you
No.
know that
It's
it,
facts.
it's a fact. It doesn't lie. And I know when J.A. Nation Know No Color Lines in J.A. Rogers' book, they spoke about many
Mhm.
African people out in Europe and in Russia as well, and Germany. So I don't doubt
Facts.
that. That's beautiful. So when we talk about point six is the Phoenicians and Etruscans, if I'm saying it correctly. And
Etruscans. Yeah.
Etruscans, yeah.
Mhm.
Etruscans. Yeah, the Phoenicians. Can you get into that?
Mr. Aman, take it away.
Yeah.
uh, so when we start reading about the Phoenicians and the Etruscans, this is also prior to first century, maybe a little bit after first century. But honestly, the people who were the most seafaring through the Mediterranean, through the Red Sea, through
Mhm.
this region, that they called Turkey. They were the most seafaring, the people who did the most travel through the sea, who knew the sea the well, the best. Were the folks in this area called Adulis. Many times, what's known as Phoenicia steals the glory and the history of Adulis. Many times, they'll say the Etruscans, but when we examine the Etruscans very closely, and I encourage all of you to examine it. You look at the pottery, you look at the way of life of the people, you look at the region that they're in, which is right across the sea from Adulis. Is
Mhm.
clearly is clearly these guys, Habari Nagasi, Adulis, what are now known as the Eritreans. Clearly, you can even look at the complexion of the people, etc. And once again, there's a island in Greece known as Eritrea to this day. You see what I'm saying? So, when we think about Rome, these are the founders of Rome. These are the original people who came to this area that they call Rome and founded it before it became known as Rome, the Etruscans, and you can hear that Etra, right?
Yeah,
Like
of course,
Eritrea in there.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago we were watching a documentary about, an archaeological finding, um, un- under like under the water in the ocean in Italy, and the Etruscans and their artifacts and the pottery and the designs, everything was like people still do that back home. People still do the
Mhm.
clay pots and the
Yeah,
the different designs that they have. It was just still that's something, and that's why I want us to really like have um like this discovery or rediscovery, because these are great civilizations, but a lot of that greatness still thrives. I
yeah,
mean, just to talk about the Ge'ez language and the fact that, like, I'm well versed in it. Like, I can write poetry in it. I can read books in it. It's something that's still alive. That's still a language of instruction, a language of like worship, a language of like legal, system.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
see that.
When
That
you
the
and
geese.
when you
I want to learn that.
geese, when,
Yeah, well,
when it's like when you hear the words and when you hear the sayings, the old sayings, it's almost like hadiths, but it's
yeah,
just Eritrean. You can get a little glimpse of the old world prior to first century that has been preserved and brought over here to us. And it's one of the few languages or cultures or religions where you get a glimpse of the old world prior to 1 AD. That's what's so beautiful about it. It's so beautiful.
yeah, man, I want to get into that because that sounds.
Mhm.
It's like it's very compelling. Like you like, yo, I want to. I feel like language is power. It's frequency,
Indeed.
sound of it. So that right there could reverberate or get one into a state of mind,
yeah.
identity.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And
And
it's really important in the decolonization of the global blackness or the global black family, because Europeans want to tell you that by colonizing or by enslaving black people, they brought civilization, they brought religion and
lies.
Yeah. Right.
you know how many publishing houses and newspapers we had in Eritrea before they came and dismantled everything.
Of course, of course. Of course, within that region, they had we know mathematics, from Kemet and everything, from Africa itself, a lot of mathematics. But there was a special way of math. My father had a friend, I believe, was either Ethiopian or Eritrean, where he would
Mm.
do math with coffee beans, like certain calculation. I'm like, yo, that's crazy.
Uh,
I don't know. She probably from yeah, like with for like coffee beans, and he was just from one side
mm.
to another, and he would find the answer. I'm like, yo, that's wild. Like not how we do it here. Like
Right.
not the simple. Oh, if I have 10, I'm gonna remove 5 and
Hmm.
continue with 5. No, this was some other complex mathematics he would do with that. And I used to be like,
So Mr. Amen will testify to this.
Hmm.
When I go to the water, when I go to the beach, I like to collect like little stones,
yeah,
and these are what we played with as children. But this is like there's a game that I can play with these that
mhm,
teaches math.
Yeah.
but just
Mhm.
حالة ثلاثة ثلاثة أربعة حموشة, and then the way you play it,
Mhm.
one, you're practicing like fine motor skills, but you're also like doing grouping, groups of two and
Yeah.
three and four and one, and so I just happened to have this in my purse because I collected them, a few days ago when I went to the water.
See, like so such rich culture, man. We got to go out there, man.
Yeah, we should take a whole crew of people and really, really excavate it and do the knowledge and whatnot and just soak up the culture, That would be a wonderful thing, Red Family. Yeah.
Definitely,
Mhm.
and it's also excavation. I see they have done, and correct me if I'm wrong, whether it's in
Mhm.
Eritrea or within Ethiopia, where they
Mhm.
pulled off these large cross-like symbols that were buried, like a town
Mhm.
that it was like I believe Coptic Christian or maybe to
Oh,
be able to go through.
Lalibela. You're talking about Lalibela.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little bit further down the road in Aksum, but
yeah,
it's the same region, family.
And
It's the
still
same
very,
region.
very prominent. Like that's one
Yeah.
of my dreams. I want to visit Lalibela, like to have
Hmm.
12 churches that are carved out of a mountain.
yeah.
And they're not just ancient history, they're
Hey,
functional. People
they're
go there.
here.
One of my
That's right.
aunts from the village I was born in,
Mhm.
after she decided she wanted to be a nun, she just packed her stuff and moved to Lalibela and she never came back.
Wow.
People still do that. Like there are nuns
Wow.
and monks that live there. And it's like
Mhm.
one of the world's wonders. If it was somewhere in Europe, it would be a whole different story as far as
Mhm.
how it's uplifted and celebrated. Yeah, but that's like a very prominent place in Ethiopia. And I dream of going there as a Tawahado.
Yeah,
Um,
That's another place we gotta.
it's like
Yeah.
a for Tawahados, it's like a pilgrimage, like to go there and to commune with. There are monks that have been there all their lives, and to like think about the spiritual, collective spiritual
hmm
resonance and vibration that is created in that
of course,
space.
of course, of course, and that's what I want to experience over there because I want to that language when I hear like some like there's an Ethiopian church in Harlem, and I was walking past one time. They were praying in Geese, and I was
Mm.
like, wow, like you felt that even like looking at the handwriting, like the grammar, the writing. And I'm like, this
Hmm.
is not like it's not regular lettering. This right here is
That's a fact.
it's a language of flames.
So, you just reminded me, Mike, when I was just thinking about this the last couple of days,
Hmm
I kept having this song of gratitude that I made up a few years ago when I was going through a trial
hmm
of, just up and down. I came up with the song of gratitude and I was like, I should share it. So now that you bring the chanting, which
hmm
is like, for me, that pulls my heart, right? So, I want to share that with you when you have time, like either now or at the end. But I
Whenever
have
you whenever you
already.
whenever you feel free, sister, you can share it whenever.
Okay, so I shared the last time we were on the word temesgan, meaning
Mhm.
to be in gratitude,
Yes.
or thankful. So the song is called temesgan.
All right, definitely. You know what? Before the show wrap up, she gonna you're gonna chant that for us, and
Okay,
we
I will.
appreciate that because
Let
I'm
me
all
know.
about that positive energy.
Sure, let
Um,
me know. We can close with that.
Moreau and Aksum. If I'm saying it correct. Moreau and
Yes, sir.
Aksum. What is
Mhm.
what? Can you guys break it down for us? Define that for us.
I think we talked about this last show. Let's go back to 325 AD. What was going on? Meroe is a little bit more ancient than Adulis. So if we're to go back, you're asking before what was going on before Adulis. Meroe was a civilization that I know, as far as my studies, that pretty much predated. But Meroe was wiped out when Aksum went to. They sent somebody. What is his name? It's on the tip of my tongue. Frumentius
Mhm.
to the 325 AD meeting in Nicaea. And when he
Yeah.
came back from there to Aksum, he changed the religion of Aksum more to Rome's version of Christianity. And then they attacked Meroe because once again, the queen of Meroe, she was warring with Rome and she was getting in their ass. She was giving them a peace. I'm an queen, I'm an arena. So they're what they said, well, since we can't beat these people, and like I said, this region was the people who pretty much controlled the trade routes on land and on sea. So they were trying to take over the trade routes, Rome, but they knew they had to get her out the way. They couldn't get her out the way. They couldn't bribe her. So they got Aksum to attack her. And Aksum, as a result, became their garrison for Roman Christianity in this region, and still is to this day, you know.
Oh, man, a lot of
Yeah.
see
So if
once
people ask, what happened to the Nubians? That's what happened to the Nubians. But the Nubians are still around in the form of Somalis,
yeah,
Ethiopians, Eritreans, Yemenis, but they're spread out. You see.
well, not as concentrated as it was.
Yes,
Peace,
sir.
peace, little sister.
This is my daughter,
Oh, peace. How you doing, beautiful?
Yasmin.
She's helping me because I accidentally moved the screen. Sorry. Go
No, you
ahead.
good. You good. It didn't stop at anything. So the next one is Erythraean Plus, if I'm saying it correctly.
Yes, sir. The Erythraean Peripheral. This is a book a PDF that anybody could get. But what it does, it gives you an actual historical account of some of the first folks who came from outside of this region into this region. Yeah, and it tells you about the sea. It tells you about the products that they exported, what they
Mm-hmm.
imported, how they lived, and this person's observation of what he saw in this region. But it's really good because it's a really old document, but it's still available. And it was, like I said, it's the first AD document. How much stuff can you read from first AD, one AD? You
Yeah.
see.
Wow, man.
And this
It's
was
such a
what the Red
powerful.
Sea was called. It used to be called the Erythraean Sea, not the Ethiopian Sea, not
Right.
the Saudi Arabian Sea, but the Erythraean Sea. You feel me? And when I looked up the word Erythraean, they said it meant red. I said, wow.
Mm.
See, so this is before it was called the Red Sea, it was called the Erythraean Sea, as in Eritrea, just with an H.
So, what's the difference between the Erythraean Sea and the Erythraean Peninsula?
Um, they're just talking about that area, that particular area within this
Mhm.
book. When they say peripheralist, it means like, the peripheral. So
Yeah.
like everything that's around
Within that.
that. Yeah, yeah. hmm
Yeah, I'm gonna download that PDF. I'm gonna look for that tonight because I'm like
hmm
this. I'm still like processing, taking it in. Like wow, like there's a lot
It's
more
like
to
a whole world of information that we've been kept away from. You know what I mean? It's really,
exactly.
mm,
'Cause most people
yeah,
when they study Africa, knowledge of self, some get stuck on Egypt and West
yes, sir.
Africa and then
hmm
slavery, but we don't go further like to go to like you know Eritrea,
hmm
Eritrea, Ethiopia, Mali, and all that, because we just say okay,
hmm
Islam, but there was something more than the Islam, and if you study other books, they will tell you
hmm
about all religions stem from Africa, forms of spirituality, but then depending on who you get the information from, you could be misguided. You just think that
Yes, sir.
Christianity was just given to us from slavery, but no, they had different forms in the
Actual
purest
fact.
form.
See?
Yeah.
So for the ninth point, we go talk about Yared 4th through 5th century. Yared or Jared, if I'm saying it correctly.
Mhm.
So, yeah, Yared in the Tawahado tradition is known as the father or the founder of what you mentioned earlier, the melody or the
Mhm.
chanting, the music of Tawahado. Um, Yared is credited for creating that. And so he was a student, and his mom had sent him to a monastery to learn, to be a, to eventually be a priest. And then the it wasn't going well, and it was frustrating, and he kept not getting it, and they actually had sent him away, and he was considered a failed child. And then he had, so he was walking, and he uh sat under a tree. Um and I was talking to a Tawado priest from Eritrea, and he was like, I can take you to that place in Eritrea where that happened, where he actually had a vision, and he basically got a download of the music, and he basically was became the founder of the Tawahado melody, the Tawahado music. The
Wow.
And
Mhm.
it's still practiced. It's still, which is actually what really really draws my spirit, because as a performing artist, as a singer, my mom talks about how I started singing at age 2, like making songs about my dad who I missed because he was somewhere else, as a freedom fighter and as a but yeah, so the music part in Tawahado is what really, draws me and keeps me captivated.
That story
So
right
Yara
there.
is the founder.
We look at we look. Before we go into that, that story right there sounds so familiar, like the whole Isaac Newton thing when he got the.
Right. That's what I
Yeah,
said. That's what I said,
yeah,
brother. That's
yeah,
exactly what I said. Like, wait a
yeah.
minute, that sounds very familiar.
It
Wait.
sounds familiar. Like what? So,
And then that's the story of Buddha too. He went and sat underneath a tree too, and then came to. It's like, wait a minute now. What is
yeah,
it with these trees, man?
yeah. I'm telling you, nature connecting with one because
Which is the
Mm-hmm.
logo on my card for Afro Moves. It's a tree.
It's the tree,
he
the
I
tree
want
of
to sit
life,
under
man.
that tree.
said he took it right
Well,
there.
when you listen to the Islamic prayers too, I gotta say this, y'all. You can hear after you listen to Yarid, then you listen to the Islamic prayers, which we know Yarid came in the 5th century. Islam didn't come to the 7th century. You
Mhm.
can hear his influence, the way he sings the prayers in Islam as well. Even though this guy's Christian,
Well, I mean,
so
right, the first disciple of Muhammad that was asked to you do the call to prayer
come on,
was
come on,
Bilal, who's
Bilal.
Ethiopian, right? The
He
Ethiopian.
was from the Coptic church. That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, yo, that's
So
dope.
now we
Any
know where
instruments
that
used?
originated from.
Wow.
He,
Any special instruments
Mm.
were used during that within the Yarid? Like it's a style of singing, but any instruments that correlates with that
Yes, a
orchestrates?
lot of wind instruments, as well as string instruments, the flute.
Mhm.
There's
What is
a
the guitar called?
there's a
Yeah.
big one with strings called the gabana, and then there's kirar, which is played with a string. There's wata, which is like they call it Ethiopian violin, but it's like a one string, and then you play it with another string. Yeah, many instruments, and of course the drums, the heartbeat. Yeah, the
TLC.
the Tohado drums are big, and they have like one end is like wide, which makes the bass, and then the other end is like smaller, which you makes the more higher pitch sound. So boom, 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 boom. Yeah, we
Hit,
gotta play some music next time.
hitting the chakra.
Right, right.
So
That'd be nice.
that's so dope, man. Like I'm gonna go look up that document you mentioned, and I'm gonna look for that book because I don't know. It just feel like that culture is
Yeah, please
Calling you,
check
man.
out this book.
yeah,
It
it's something there,
it's
bro.
all over the
Mhm.
states. You can order it online. Very important. Very 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 well researched. Easy to read. Well put together. You will
Hmm.
not regret this.
So I know they have what they consider the Hebrews out there, the Colossians. Like
Yeah,
how is it with them out there? Like like the relationship with being that we have Coptic Christianity, the
Hmm.
Hebrew, the Colossians, and Islam.
Hmm.
Do they are they any backlash? Because I know some regions don't want to accept them as the original Hebrews. They're like, well, I'm like, that's a lie. You got to deal with the Colossians and not Ethiopia and Eritrea.
Yeah. So I know, that the what is known as the Torah,
Hmm.
which is the Old Testament in Christianity, right? So like all the traditions, all the dietary, principles are like practiced within Tawahado. And I know that the so I have never been to Ethiopia. I have not lived with Ethiopian Jews. I don't have well versed understanding of that experience, so it wouldn't be fair to like for me to claim that I know. What I know is like one of my closest Ethiopian sisters, her grandmother is Jewish, um, and some of her family members were relocated to Israel during that area in that era in the 80s, right? But you also, Mike, you have to keep in mind the geopolitical games that are played, right?
That's a fact. Hmm.
Who does it serve? Who does it serve for, for people to
Hmm.
have? gone through that process, and what was their experience once they got to Israel, which is controlled by Zionist, you know, um, uh, power, right?
Mhm.
So there's more to that story than
Yeah,
what Hollywood puts out,
of course.
or what is popularized. Because I know not every Jewish family was airlifted and taken out of Ethiopia. And I
Mhm.
know that for hundreds of years, there has been religious harmony in East Africa between Jews and Muslims and Christians.
Yeah,
And I'm not, and I also don't want to minimize any oppression or any marginalization that has taken place, with our people because of religion. Like, I can tell you my family, my immediate family, my father, after having had three children before I was born, converted the family from Tawahado to Kanisha, which is the equivalent of what is called Lutheran in the Western world, because of uh, Swedish missionaries, and because of his uncles that were in the city were already converted and influenced, and that influenced him. He also saw some corruption within the Tawahado church in his village, so that was his reaction, right? And I can
gotcha.
I can tell you from my personal experience, the ostracization and the marginalization that I, as a child, experienced from ignorant Tawahado practitioners and Tawahado priests, even, Um,
Mm.
so just to give you an idea, but I think when we generalize, like, oh, all the Jews in Ethiopia were, persecuted, all Ethiopians were persecuted.
Eh,
So many Ethiopians from all ethnic groups lost their lives.
That's a
You know,
fact. That's a fact.
hundreds and thousands of young people perished during that time. So let's not like,
No, I'm with you. I agree with 100%. Trust me. I know what side of history I stand on, and unfortunately, wherever certain people go, they bring pain and misery, and that's just the game. That's the game for gain. And they listen. I'm learning about this. I'm shocked myself learning about this. They do paper genocide, cultural
yeah,
genocide,
yeah,
hate. And then when you
yeah,
speak out about it, you're considered to be some kind of
yeah.
radical martyr and such. So I don't follow that narrative. I'm all about tell the story like it is, and let's not forget nothing.
Right.
So for this, let's get into the last point, which is an African people's quest for freedom and justice by Alan Seged Tesfa,
I guess
which
we
is that
already
book right
covered
there.
it. Yeah.
We covered that, but that book right there, I'm gonna make sure I put that in my cart. Look for that for Amazon. And before we check out, my sister,
Mm.
she said she's gonna give us a melody in the language of geese.
Hey,
Okay,
hey.
let's go. Let's go. You know what I'm saying?
በስመ አብ ወወልድ ወመንፈስ ቅዱስ ወሐደ አምላክ አሜን።
Man.
ተመስገን 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 አምላኸይ ተመስገን 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 አምላኸይ ስለዚ ሃብካኒ ኩሉ ኣብ ሂወተይ ኣብ ዝኸድኩ ኸይደ ተመስገን ያመሰይ ተመስገን ዋላንተ ወደኩ እንቅፋት መንገደይ ተስፋት ህበኒ ከሐድስ እምነተይ ስለዚ ሃብካኒ ዓቕሚ ምስ ክእለተይ ኣብ ዝኸድኩ ኸይደይ ተመስገን ያመሰይ ተመስገን ኩሉ ዝሓለፈ ገዲፈ ንድሕረይ ከም ሓዱሽ ክጅምር ክቕፅል እምነተይ ስለዝሃብካኒ ጸጋ ምሉእ ፍቕረይ ኣብ ዝኸድኩ ኸይደይ ተመስገን ያመሰይ ተመስገን ስለ ኣቦይ ኣደይ ተመስገን ስለ ሓወይ ሓፍተይ ተመስገን ስለ ወደይ ጓለይ ተመስገን ስለ ኩሉ ነገር ተመስገን ተመስገን
Wow, that's peace. Temiskin for real. That was peaceful. I felt that. Temiskin. I appreciate you. You all for coming out, Mag. Sister Kanuma, I appreciate you for breaking down the history. We got to have you to come back and get more into this because this is a beautiful thing. Learning about this beautiful melodies, the sound at peace. Temiskin. Shout out to the listeners, the viewers, the chat. Joey, appreciate the super chat, my brother. And we out. NYP.
Peace,
Peace.
family.
Peace.
Them is king.
Temiskin,
ተመስገን
bro.